Investor Connect podcast program. This is Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of the show, in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, private equity, family offices, and many other investor groups for startups and growth companies. I hope you enjoy this episode. Thank you for joining us. Well, hello, this is Hall Martin with Investor Connect. Today we're here with Lawrence Lerner of Pithia. Lawrence, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me on, Hall.
Well, great. Can you tell us about your background before you started investing in early stage companies?
Absolutely. I started my career more than 25 years ago as a second generation internet developer. So I've been building and launching edge technologies in the internet space, mobile, social for a very long time. Discover launched their merchant system, Motorola build their early smartphones technology. And that's actually when I first got into cryptocurrency in the late 90s in the first generation of it. I've been a public board director, worked with a lot of large global consulting companies, and really have worked in process transformation and technology and digital payments all over the world.
So what led you to start investing in the blockchain sector?
Looking at it, when I got involved in blockchain in 2011, I saw the same opportunities as we did in the early days of the internet. It was very nascent technology, but it was ability to create, if the internet's the internet of communications, then blockchain is the internet of value exchange. And I saw us being able to build systems that would let us exchange value. Well, we can talk more about some of those things later. And really get in early on an enabling technology. That is a technology that's going to be used in all sectors and makes other things work and connects them, just like the internet and web servers connect us to all kinds of different services.
So for investors out there who are considering investing in the blockchain space, what would be your advice to them in investing in blockchain companies in today's market?
Just remember always that blockchain is not internet bacon. Not everything goes with it. But when you see a blockchain application that is addressing a couple of fundamental things, right? How is it removing or enabling a trust barrier where you've got multiple different parties, say in land titles, when you're dealing with government, you've got a buyer, a seller, you've got the county recorder, you've got a mortgage company, bank, all of those people coming together that may or may not have a relationship or share services. That's a great opportunity. Anything served by triple entry accounting, that means that in the blockchain, when you do a transaction, the payment, the settlement, and whether that's exchanging files or some kind of token or kind of currency is happening. So payment, settlement, and accounting all happen at once. So all of those three things. And then we always look at the fundamentals of the company, go-to-market strategy, finances, and the management team. How long have they worked together? What's their history? What's their track record? What have they delivered? And how else can they create value? Because it's always about the people.
Great. So let's talk about the blockchain space today and investing in it as far as how is the industry evolving? It's moving very rapidly, but it's also still at the very early stages of infrastructure building and so forth. But how would you describe the evolution of the industry in the last 6 months and in the next 6 months?
If we look at a point in time from today, we've exited what everybody's calling the crypto winter, and we're just getting to escape the bottom of the J curve. So what are we seeing in terms of investments? You can almost broadly divide it into two areas. One, the enterprise space. The company Okta surveyed dozens, or almost maybe more than $100 billion plus digital companies. 61% of them are investing in blockchain, building it out and doing significant initiatives. And you've got companies like Allianz, Maersk, IBM, JP Morgan, which is kind of the industry joke because they're always saying how little people are, how it was a fraud and a scam, but they put more money in it than almost anyone. And then private markets. You've got companies like ourselves. We talk to a lot of companies that are at the larger scale of investing, and those companies are putting significant money into blockchain companies. And it's really the pure play blockchain that we're looking at. And that's always been part part of our deal thesis.
And so, where do you see it going? What applications and sectors you think are going to be coming up with the killer app for blockchain? One thing I noticed is there's plenty of development, but not a lot of applications out there running successfully with users yet.
It's still early days, absolutely. Fintech is still the king. We are seeing a lot of applications for clearing settlements, for transactions, more over and above that just exchanging Bitcoin or Ether or other tokens. Supply chain is a huge one because there are low-hanging fruit in supply chain, in the insurance industry, anywhere where you've got a lot of documents, again, going back to the previous example, shared among multiple parties that need to be exchanged and validated. We've got one company that we're talking to in the Southwest. They do revenue cycle assurance. That's in the healthcare space. 40% of all healthcare bills have mistakes on them. Why? Because all of the different participants, the doctors, the insurance companies, hospitals, whoever else you're dealing with, all have different systems and look at your health data differently. Being able to put that on the blockchain with finality gives you a great example of data management where you're looking at the data. So companies that do that have huge potential, and that's why we see it in insurance, government transactions for things like property and title. Those are happening today. Maersk and Allianz are live examples in industry.
So tell us more about your investment thesis. What exactly are you looking for to invest in this sector, and how did you come to that thesis?
I'll start with the end. We looked at it like we did in the internet days. If this is an enabling technology, then you need to have certain foundational things. I think you touched on it before we started talking. Wallets and digital identity are key to every type of transaction. You need to be able to store and manage those digital assets in a robust and clean way. And today, the interfaces for those are still not great. The first company that comes up with the killer wallet is going to own that market. Digital identity, one of our companies like Trusted Key, which is working across industries in healthcare and automotive and services, that they're able to work to onboard customers into organizations like hotel chains, airlines, and others that have millions of transactions every year. They're going to scale. So what we wanted to do as part of our thesis is own the highway or the tollway, as it were. So we look for those good infrastructure plays and companies that are really owning the foundational elements of starting up blockchains and managing them. Then we can move on to the more aspirational things.
What are a couple of examples of startups that fit that thesis that maybe you've invested in or that you know of?
So Lucidity is one of our investments, and they are just killing it in the advertising or ad tech space, where they're working with companies like Toyota, who did a press release with them, 21% improvement on web traffic. It's very simple. Again, taking all of those millions of transactions when you have an ad that's produced digitally. So between the brand and the eyeball, your Procter & Gamble, Toyota, Nissan, pick a company. And then when it gets to you, whether it's on Facebook, on other kinds of websites, there can be up to 65 handoffs. And what they do is they streamline that, and they're able to come back and say exactly how many transactions there were. And what they've been finding through live examples with lots of companies is that 30% of it was fraud. And they were able to actually identify real cost savings and real benefits. So IBM has pulled them in. A host of other top name agencies are working with them. And Trusted Key, as I mentioned earlier, a fantastic digital identity play. And they're, again, doing work across healthcare and in the automotive sector for loading information in. IoT also becomes a big play for that.
Well, you mentioned earlier it's early days for blockchain, but more specifically, what are the specific challenges that startups are facing in building out applications in this space?
I think there's a couple of things. Is that one, there's still a lot of fear and uncertainty. People still conflate cryptocurrency with the blockchain. And because there's been, to date, a high degree of regulatory uncertainty, That's kept companies from making decisions or making decisions that probably aren't as smart as they could have been. And so what's happened is last 2 weeks ago, FinCEN issued guidance, the IRS issued guidance yesterday. That regulatory certainty is improving things. There's also a lot of business and technical risk because the blockchains that are out there, the Tezos, the EOS, the Ethereums, are not getting all of the robust testing that we would like to see. So again, still early days as enterprises continue to work through that. And cross-collaboration between chains is not quite there yet. We saw the same sort of thing with web servers in the early days and emerging HTML standards. Everybody looked at it and tweaked it a little bit differently. We're going to see that improve, and you're going to see similar conversations happen.
Well, great. Well, if you had to pick a couple of applications or subsectors in the blockchain space, which ones would you say are good immediate opportunities to pursue today?
Anything that creates a liquid circulating economy, and that's a really fancy way of saying something on the blockchain, like a game, like a World of Warcraft. And there are a couple of blockchain-based games where tokens are being exchanged, and not just because they happen in the gaming world. And we're talking to two different companies. One has 9 billion circulating tokens every month in their closed world. Now imagine that was Ethereum. You'd be able to take those tokens and go and spend them in other places. So that's one. Or ones that are creating digital wallets that create economies. Flex is doing that with Nordstrom and Starbucks here in Seattle. Supply chain is the other big one. Because even if beyond changing the logistics and the shipping, it's all about the document exchange. 20% of the $4 trillion freight forwarding industry, 20% is just document exchange. You can reduce 3/4 of that by moving it onto the blockchain.
Well, I certainly agree with that. I've talked to many supply chain persons who, after they hear about blockchain, they're very excited and they're jumping up and down saying, I want that, I want that, I want that. So you know it's a good opportunity when they're ready to go after it. So I certainly agree with that. In the last few minutes that we have here, what else should we cover that we haven't?
Yeah, I think the other thing is going back to the fact that it's an enabling technology. There's a lot of crossover between blockchain, machine learning, AR, VR, and IoT, and there's some other industries that are out there. But looking at how it enables all of them, and we're seeing tons of investment from other venture capital companies in those areas, that's the area that's really interesting to take a look at because it's going to help grow the IoT industry to become very practical where people aren't worried about security and people hacking baby cams or garbage cans as happened in London a few years ago.
Well, that's great. Well, how best for listeners to get back in touch with you?
So we've tried to make ourselves the most available venture capital fund that you could work with. You've got our website and my LinkedIn. You can also find me on Twitter, Telegram, and WeChat under Rev, R-E-V, Innovator, I-N-N-O-V-A-T-O-R.
Well, great. We'll put that in the show notes and let people know that as well. Appreciate your sharing your information with us today and hope to have you back for a follow-up soon.
Awesome. Paul, thank you so much for having me on.
Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Paul T. Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early-stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.